Bonehead for the Bonehead podcast, and welcome to the monthly meta. This is where we go through two things in Blood Bowl: what's legal and what's lethal. We're going to spend a little bit of time having a look at what's current in Blood Bowl right now. What is out there if you're just coming back to Blood Bowl, you're just starting out with Blood Bowl, or maybe your league or tournament is coming up and you want to make sure that you know what's occurring. We're going to go through everything that you can get and everything that you need. And secondly, we're going to have a look at some of the results recently in Blood Bowl tournaments. So we're going to be looking at competitive constructed Blood Bowl and see which teams have been performing. Now, we've got some great feedback from our last month's episode where you guys wanted to know what had done well in the last period. So we're going to look at the overall results, but we are also going to have a look at who did great things in the last month. So anyway, let's start with what's legal. Okay, so we are in June 2022 now. The Norse release has dropped, so you've got new star players, and realistically, we've got a new team. So if you haven't been following Blood Bowl, the Norse roster got changed up a little bit. We lost a positional changed into a different positional, and we got beer boars added. For the first time, we've got these weird little animals that have area of effects. As it stands, don't think it's had too much of an impact on the Norse ability to win, because you can kind of build the roster without those things affecting it. The biggest issue here, though, is on the impact on the linemen. So they gained Thick Skull, but they also got a skill called Drunkard, which means they have to -1 from their dice when rushing. It's just the lineman, but it means that the lineman now can only go for it on a 3+ instead of a 2+, which does actually slow down the team a fair old whack. Now, when we look at the results for the last month, the new Norse team won't necessarily be impacting that fully, so it's not a real clear kind of gauge to see how well the team's been doing in constructed Blood Bowl. But next month we should have a bit of a better look at it. So star player models have also been released. Everything from the Norse book has now dropped too. So we've got Skrog Snowpelt, the Yeti star player. We got Ivar Eriksson, the Norse version of Griff, who is cheaper but doesn't have very good agility. And then we've got Thorson Stoutmead, who is essentially a Norse bombardier, but no secret weapon and can only throw a bomb essentially once a drive. Really interesting star player. Now, we've also had the Rumbelow Sheepskin model finally released. That's all Forge World. It's a cool model. By now, you've probably found a different one to use for your team, but I think now the entire rulebook is complete. And probably the biggest thing to happen in Blood Bowl in the last month, since the Norse release anyway, is the May 2022 FAQ. Now, if you've been following the channel or listening to the podcast, we've pretty much taken a big deep dive into the FAQ and what's happened. So as massive an impact as the November one was, the May one wasn't that impactful. Now, I think we've picked out some highlights a little bit later on, though. Okay, so we are in format 14A, which means Spike 14 has come out, and A means that there's been an addendum, in this case, the FAQ. So, what's legal in Blood Bowl at the moment? We've got the rulebook, and then we've got the Spike 11 Necromantic Spike, if you want to be running the Necromantic team. Everything you need is in the rulebook, with the exception of a few star players that are in Spike 11. However, and I gush about this every month, Spike 11 is still the pinnacle of Spike magazines. There's just a whole bunch of cool fluff and a whole bunch of cool kind of optional rules in there. Really, really love it. Spike 12 has been released as well with the Nobility and Black Orc. Nothing in there that you're going to need, but if you are playing one of those two teams, it gives you an idea of some ways to develop your team, some ways to set up, but a little bit of background fluff. It's a nice to have, but you certainly don't need it. Now, this one you will need, which is the Spike 13 magazine. I've put Acorn on there, but this is where the Corn team is. So if you are picking up a Corn team, this is the first one of these teams that is not in the core rulebook. So if you want that roster ready to go, then that's where you get it from, or, you know, just watch one of our videos. And the same is true of the Spike 14. So you get the Norse roster, the changes to the Norse roster, and the Norse star player rules. Now, the cool thing is, with the way Games Workshop are doing all their Blood Bowl stuff at the moment, if you buy a team, part of the instructions are the rules for the team. If you buy a Forge World star player, part of the instructions are the rules for the star player. And a lot of the star players are now available as PDF downloads too. So actually, it's getting a bit easier to get into. The great thing about Blood Bowl is the rulebook is really all you need. Most places have roster builders, and on the roster you will have basically all of the stats, all of the costs, all of the skills, so you're pretty much covered. But I do recommend Spike magazines. They're a great read, there's some great fluff in there, and there's normally a cool, fun rule or two as well. So that's the core rules stuff, and then we've got the bits and bobs that go along with it. So the Teams of Legend PDF is available on the Games Workshop website. I will link it in below if you haven't seen that. That's where the rules for the old teams that were around that haven't been refreshed yet sit. So Amazon, Chaos Dwarf, we've got Norse now, High Elves, Tomb Kings, and Vampires. There's 5 Teams of Legend still outstanding, so we're kind of waiting with bated breath for Games Workshop to bring those back, although we have to face into the fact that we've seen the majority of these teams get a little bit of a refresh and a little bit of a change when they return. So Vampires, will they get a big guy? Amazons, will they get more fun? Sorry, Amazon coaches out there. So on top of that, there is also the Slann team. So the NAF is a player association for Blood Bowl, essentially, and in the olden times they had 3 teams that they recommended. Bretonian is now gone and been replaced with Imperial Nobility as an official team. Khorne, Demons of Khorne, is now gone and has been replaced by an official team from Games Workshop, the Khorne team, which leaves one unofficial team left there, which is the Slann team. Now, that Slann team was revamped as Kislev in Blood Bowl 2, so they are the ones who leap around a lot. They're basically space frogs. It's an awesome roster, it's a lot of fun, and if you follow Punga on Patreon, they've just, over the course of the last 2 months, dropped a really good STL team. And if you want a physical team, I recommend Fanath Space Frogs. Anyway, so those are your additional teams for Blood Bowl. All of the teams are Legend, and the NAF Slann team generally accepted everywhere. Teams of Legend will be accepted everywhere. The Slann one, if you go to a tournament or in a league, you will be very likely to come up against it. No, that's not true. To be allowed to run it, it's quite a rare team, as we'll kind of see when we look at the stats. So we've got the FAQ, Games Workshop May, November FAQ errata. We've seen that. The big one there is the throw teammate clarification, where if your thrown player hits another player, it will be a turnover, where historically it's wasn't really called out, or people assumed that because the rule above it says it's not a turnover, it applied to this. They've cleared it up, and we now are aware that if you throw a dude into another dude, it's going to be a turnover, regardless as to whether your aerial player has a ball or not. We've got the star player downloads from the Games Workshop website too. The good thing is, most of this stuff is available online. You will need the rulebook, but the rosters and the special rules and the star players are all kind of available as PDF downloads from the Games Workshop website, or you can get them on our channel, essentially. So, good stuff there. However, there is the 2021 Almanac, and the Almanac has got a bunch of the Spike magazines that we previously talked through, a bunch of the star player rules, including things like Bomber and Fungus the Loon, who are also available as PDF downloads. The Almanac is a great thing to buy, but you do not need it, but it does a great job of taking a lot of those other independent resources and putting it in one place to make it a bit easier. And then there's the stuff that you really don't need, but you really should have, which is Death Zone 2021. I love this. It is chock full of just more optional rules for Blood Bowl. We've got the rules for Sevens in there, we've got the rules for Giants, build your own mercenaries, a ton of wizards and other inducements. Really, really great. Some of it, most of it won't be allowed in tournaments. The reason for that is rules complexity. If you are a Games Workshop survivor, and perhaps you've played one of their other games, you'll know that it's a case of I've got this rulebook and this rulebook and this rulebook and this rulebook says I can use this special power. Well, we try to keep that pretty low in Blood Bowl, but the Death Zone book will have some cool inducements there for League, so definitely pick that up if you're a League player and you want something fun. The good thing about League is it's easier to introduce these optional rules like stadiums and things, and the Death Zone book is where all that good stuff kind of sits. Great. I think there's weather charts in there as well. It's a really cool book. Special play cards and pitches. Again, these you won't see at tournament, but are quite frequent in leagues. Special play cards. I've got my little stack here. Are an inducement. They're in the rulebook. They're good to go, and they vary very, very, very wildly. So you can pay 100, 150k for a card, and it can be garbage, or it can basically just kill a dude. So it's a bit of a gamble. I don't necessarily recommend them if you're playing competitively, but if you want to have a good laugh, then actually just having the special play cards is a really cool way to spice up the game, as are the pitch rules. There's also the referee rules from White Dwarf 466, which I think are also in the Almanac, but we did a Theory Thursday on it as well. And then, of course, Dungeon Bowl. Dungeon Bowl, I mean, it's Blood Bowl in a dungeon with wizards and teleporters and treasure chests, and it's just an outrageously fun way to play the game. Normally, you don't need it, but if you want to play it, I do recommend it. And if you want to see what Dungeon Bowl's about, we're in the middle of the Bonehead Dungeon Bowl Championship at the moment, so there's plenty of games for you to watch to get a good idea of just how crazy Dungeon Bowl can be. Okay, so that's everything that's out now for Blood Bowl. If you're getting in, that's the stuff you need to be aware of. What's next? So we got a couple of star player models outstanding. Bryce the Slice Cambuel is one of the necromantic star players from White Dwarf from Spike 11. I think he's the only outstanding undead star player model. Grashnak Blackhoof was released in Spike 13, the Corn one. And I think those are the only star player models that we're waiting for at the moment. Which is really quite interesting, because that means they're not really held back. And we've seen a lot of this recently with Creek Rustgouger and the Goblin star players. They've just sculpted them because they wanted to sculpt them, and they've landed in the game. So I'm going to summarize this what's next piece by saying, I guess we don't know what's next. We've just had Norse, we've just had some star players. We could have a Death Zone soon with more nonsense rules. We could have random star players that they've sculpted and want to release. We could have a new team soon. I imagine the new team news will come out in Adepticon in August, so I think you're safe for a couple of months yet, but that's what's coming up. Okay, so we are going to move on to what's lethal now. So the resource I've used to gather all the stats for the matches put together by Slann, by Mike Davies, who is the ex-president of the NAF, and it's all from the NAF reported results. So the NAF is a Blood Bowl player association. You log your games. Well, that's not fair. The tournament organizer logs your games, and it's all kept on one really big but quite old-fashioned database. Mike does a really good job of putting it out on a Tableau, and he updates it every month or so, and that's what we use here to get to grips with the stats. So like I said earlier, we're going to have a look at the same thing that we look at every time, which is the overall results of Blood Bowl 2020 for the entire time. So we're going to see races come up and come down as their win percentage kind of gets better or gets worse, or new star players are brought in. But this month we are going to also have a look at just who did great in the last month to get you an idea of kind of what's lethal right now in the Blood Bowl metaverse. Well, we've got to start with the overall percentages first, and the undisputed champ is still Underworld, but it's really good to look at this because we can see that the win percentage has got, I can't remember what it was it 65%, something like that? It is going down. Every single month we see the Underworld percentage decrease down to 60% win rate now, so getting even closer there. But I mean, Underworld is still definitely a definitely one to watch. They've got Hackflem. Hackflem got more expensive. The swarming thing got affected as well. And their tier, where they went up to tier 1, means they've got less skills. So definitely leaning towards a reduced win percentage. As have the High Elves. The High Elves have suffered a win percentage loss too, potentially as a result of them being buffed up to tier 1. But 57% is a very respectable score. So they are our legendary legends still, and what I mean by legends is that they are a team of legends, so they're from the PDF. So High Elves are that other team, and the last one we're going to look at before we go into the stats is the Stunty team. At the moment, 49% of Snotlings, staying right put for the last month. They are our Stunty team in the lead, which is actually remarkable. Ogres were there for a bit at 50%, but we've seen them decline, and we just saw the Snotling team bounce up, even with the Hackflem increase. So it's entirely possible that the Underworld coaches have switched over to Snotlings so they can keep playing Hackflem. However, let's have a look at the NAF stats. Okay, so we're going to jump into some stats now. What we're going to start with is what's lethal right now. You guys asked for it on our last video, so we are going to delve into it first and foremost. And when I say what's lethal right now, this is the results of all the games that have gone and been processed through by the NAF basically since I did the last video. It can take a few weeks for TOs to update stuff, and it can take a few weeks for the NAF to clear it through, but this kind of gives us a good idea of what the last month in Blood Bowl has been like. So Chaos dropped a spot to 29 at 37% win rate. Nobility dropped 9 spots. And when I say drop spots, that's compared to basically at the historic overall results. Down 8 spots, 28, 38% win rate. Goblins actually above their little average. They're dropping, they're jumping up 2 whole spaces to 27th at a 39% win rate. Ogres dropping 3 spots, Halflings dropping 4 spots. That's Halflings at 43% and Ogres at 42%. Few hundred games in between them though, which is pretty good. Black Orcs climbing as well, up 3 spots to 44%. About 285 games played in the last month. Khorne dropping 1 spot down to 23, but still sticking around at 45%. 300 games played for the Khorne team. Nurgle getting better, up 2 spots at 46%. And Humans there dropping a spot at 48% win rate, but 500 games played by Humans in the last month. And we'll move into the mid-table here. Chaos Dwarves absolutely dropping a massive piece there. 17 spots down, 49% win rate. Snotlings dropping 1, 49% win rate as well. We've got Necromantic down 3 spots and Chaos Renegades down 3 spots at the 50% mark there as well. Orcs dropping 5 spots to 51% win rate. Underworld dropping 14 spots in the last month to put them at 52% win rate. So still above average, but very much within that sweet spot now. So we could see Underworld ending up as a very well balanced team again. Slann dropping 5 spots, Elven Union also dropping 5 spots, both down to 52%. Amazons and Dwarf 6 spots down each at 53% win rate. So that leaves us with our top 10 for the last month, which is a very interesting top 10 for the last month. So High Elves, we've seen them, our legendary legend. They've dropped 8 spots down to number 10 there, 53% win rate. So actually still maintaining a reasonable win rate there. 200 games played with High Elves. Lizardmen up 7 spots to number 9 with 54% win rate, 500 games played. Tomb Kings with nearly 300 games played have dropped 4 spots, but number 8 still with 54% win rate. My boys, Skaven, absolutely brilliant to see them represented finally in the top 10, up 10 spots to number 7 with a cheeky 55% win rate. Undead up 4 spots to number 6 at 57%. Wood Elves and Norse. Wood Elves up 2, Norse up 8 into the top 10 at 58% win rate. That's interesting. I wonder if we're seeing a bit more of potentially more Norse games being played, because a farewell tour to the old Norse team, and we'll also by now have some of the new Norse games ranked as well. So we're seeing an increase in Norse, but we can't be sure if it's down to the new roster or not. But if someone complains about the new roster, you can point to this, which is pretty fun. Old World Alliance up 23 spots with a win rate of 61%. Now, I'll admit they've only played 83 games recorded, but they've won 2/3 of them. So OWA can win, and Dark Elves up 11 spots to number 2 with a 61% win rate as well. 400 games played for Dark Elves in the last period. And this is just awesome stuff. I know there's only 35 games recorded by Vampires, but the fact they've won 66% of them takes Vampires to number 1 from what, 25th spot? So I don't know whether you can consider this a good kind of cut of where the meta is, but from what's winning and what's been winning across the last multiple thousand games in the last month, Vampires have won 66% of it, but Dark Elves, Norse, Wood Elf, Undead, Old World Alliance potentially could be in there. You know what? High Elves, Lizards, Tomb Kings, Skaven, Undead, Wood Elf, Norse, Dark Elves. We've got Vampire and OWA and Tomb Kings that are tier 3. Everybody else there is definitely a tier 1 team, and we are seeing that. So quite a lot of movement in the top 10. Okay, so we've done the last month's worth of winners. Now let's have a look and see how that affects the overall results for Blood Bowl 2020. Goblins staying put at the bottom there at 39%. Chaos dropping a percent down to 28th place at 43%. Black Orcs up, sneaking up a bit, 44%. Nurgle dropping a spot. Ogres dropping 4 spots, both down to 46% win rate. Ogres actually went down a percentage. Vampires went up a percentage to 47%, which makes sense given what we've seen over the last month. Khorne dropping 1% win, but staying at 23rd. 22nd and 21, we've got Imperial Nobility dropping 4 spots and Halfling dropping 1 spot, both sitting at a 47% win rate. Imperial Nobilities have dropped 2% in the last period as well. Halflings dropping a percentage point as well. Okay, so that takes us to our overall results for all time with Blood Bowl 2020. Goblin, Chaos, Black Orc all sitting at the bottom there, staying put. Chaos have actually lost a percentage point on their win rate, so Chaos kind of getting worse. Ogres and Nurgle both dropped 2 spots there. Ogres dropping a percentage overall too, both at 46%. Now we've got a ton of teams at 47% here. We've got Vampires climbing up because their win percentage went up in the last month. Khorne dropping a spot, Imperial Nobility dropping 3 spots, and Halfling staying put at 21. All sitting at 47% win rate, but all having a bit of a decline in win percentage. And the middle of the table, OWA climbing 6 spots and 2 win percentage to 48%. I mean, we've seen them have a good month, which so it kind of makes sense. Humans climbing 1 spot as well, staying at 48% win rate. Snotlings at 18, doing a grand job there of being the stunty of the month. 49% win rate. Chaos Renegades dropping a spot down to 17th place, but still at a 50% win rate. Skaven sneaking up 1% and 1 place to 16. Necromantic Lizardman at 50% win rate. Seeing the Lizards climb 2 spots there as they gain a win percentage overall up to mid-range at 50. Orcs dropping 2 spots, staying at 51% and 52% win rate. Also dropping 3 spots are Elven Union and Slann. So 11 and 12, but 52% win rate. Which moves us to our top 10 overall winners, I guess, win percentage. We've got Norse climbing 2 spots and a percentage to 52%. Undead up 1 spot and 1 percentage to 52% as well. Wood Elves dropping a spot. Amazons dropping a spot. Both of them at 53%. Wood Elves actually climb on their percentage, but do drop a spot. Chaos Dwarves dropped 3 places and a win percentage down to 53%. Dark Elves jumping up there, and we've seen them record a load of great wins in the last month. It's actually boosted them way up our rankings to 5th place with 53%, up 2% in the last month. Dwarves up a spot, staying at 53%. Tomb Kings up a spot, staying at 54%. And we've got High Elves at number 2. We already knew this, 57%. They have dropped a win percentage. And Underworld there at 60%, also dropping a win percentage point. And that brings us on to games played overall. Slann at the bottom there, up 94 games, but have barely got 600 recorded. OWA and Vampire both dropping a spot there in the 600 realm. Khorne climbing ever so slightly, 800 games played for them. Elven Union, 25th. Wood Elves dropping a spot. High Elves climbing a spot. Not surprised to see that. Basically, less Wood Elf games played in the last month than High Elf games. Nurgle at 22 and Chaos Renegades at 21, both with around about 1,000 games apiece. Imperial Nobility dropping a spot. Amazon going up a spot. So 260 games basically for Amazon in the last month. Snotlings and Ogres holding fast there at 18 and 17th spot. Chaos dropping 2 places here, only 200 games recorded for them at 16th spot there. Goblins going up, Tomb Kings going up, so Goblins at 14 and Tomb Kings at 15. Halflings staying in place at 13th spot, 1800 games overall. Underworld decreasing in popularity here, only the 12th most played team overall now. 197 games recorded from the last month. Norse dropping a spot as well, so 11 and 12 Norse and Underworld, which takes us to the top 10 overall teams. Games recorded, Chaos Dwarves at 10, Dark Elves at 9 and Skaven at 8, all of those increasing through the ranks. Black Orc dropping a spot, Necro climbing a spot there. Both of those teams sitting just over the 2,000 games recorded threshold. Lizardmen at 5, Humans at 4, Dwarves at 3, and then we've got a slight change in the leadership here. Orcs taking the top spot with nearly 3,000 games recorded, and Underworld sitting there, sorry, not Underworld, Undead, just used to saying Underworld when we look at top 10s, Undead sitting there. Now, Orcs had 568 games recorded in the last month, Undead nearly 500 games. What we'll do is we'll just have a very quick look at the most games recorded by the teams in the last month. We'll just look at the top 10. Okay, so top 10 teams in the last month. The most popular teams in the last month. Number 10, Halfling. Number 9, Necromantic. Number 8, Skaven. Number 7, Chaos Dwarves. And number 6, Dark Elves. So seeing a ton of games recorded for those. Dwarves, 420 games into 5th spot. Undead, 488 games at 4th spot. Humans there, 500 games. Lizardmen, 526 games. And Orcs at 568 games there. So we've been able to look and see who's been winning in the last month, and now we can see the most popular teams to be taken. If my memory recalls, we've got Skaven, Dark Elf, Chaos Dwarf, Undead, Lizardman. All of those teams were in the top 10 winningest teams in the last month. They're also the most popular, which means they are definitely ones to watch. Okay, so that wraps up our monthly meta for this time for June. We've looked at what's legal, we've looked to see what's available for Blood Bowl and what's likely to be coming up next, and then we've definitely had a good look at what's lethal at the moment, who is the most popular team, which team is doing the best, and actually it's fun to keep an eye on the stats to see how they're tracking up and down. So let me know what you think, let me know if you've got any questions, but otherwise I'm going to wrap up now and we'll be back soon with more Blood Bowl content. Happy blocking. Thanks very much for watching. We really appreciate your support. If you want to help support the channel even further, please like and subscribe, or come join us on our Patreon. We have early access to content, we get loads of feedback from you guys, and we try and do competitions as much as we can. Or you can get yourself some Bonehead podcast merch on our Spreadshirt site. So if you want to support a team, especially for the Bonehead Championship, you can pick up a shirt, a mug, things like that. It all helps support the channel and we really appreciate it. Anyway, links below. Thank you very much. Happy blocking.